Celeste, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I am doing so well. I really appreciate you coming. I know we're both running hot. You got a lot of things going on in your workday. But you are, principal, president, executive director, headmaster.
I love it. How many more terms do you have? Head wizard.
Head wizard. I don't think we can say wizard. That has some weird connotations.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
it's okay. Anyway, but you're
I'm the executive director.
There we go.
Of One Stone, and One Stone's a nonprofit here in town, and we have a high school program.
Yes,
the One Stone Lab School. So I respond to the board, and our organization beyond the high school has other programs for any high schooler in the area.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Talk to me about One Stone, because the conversation around education has really hit a fever pitch, because obviously there's a broader societal conversation going on around what is the relevance of our education system? What is the functionality of our education system? Who does our education system serve?
Yeah.
Who is making the rules for this education system? And is this really what we want? And again, obviously Idaho did pass a school choice, $50 million line item. Yeah. And it is really bringing to the table a broader conversation of, okay, if we have public schools and we have private schools, how are they different? How are they serving their patrons differently? Yeah. And what do people really want out of education? You guys at One Stone have figured out a way to kind of ditch a more classic education model that's, kind of like the factory worker model that I went through, and I'm sure you at least in part went through, and figured out like, okay, if what we want at the end of the day is to produce people with skill sets and competence.
Yeah.
Is this really where like you just all sit down, you shut up, read the book? Is this really the best way to produce competence and interest and really buy-in from the students? Or can we do it in a more project-based manner? So talk to me about how you guys started digging into this.
Well, I think I'm going to take us back to the roots, which predated me a little bit. But the mission of One Stone is making students better leaders and the world a better place, and we live it deeply in what we do. The strongest, most defining factor of One Stone that truly differentiates us from any school that I know of in the world, I'm going to be bold, is the student-driven aspect. We don't do anything without a student being a part of it. It doesn't mean they hold the reins to everything we do. I think that's a little bit of a misconception. It means their voice is a part of everything we do, because we're fundamentally committed to the learner, to the student, them knowing themselves really deeply, them having the opportunity to explore the world around them without a barrier to entry, and really learning the mindset to grow with confidence. And to do that, you have to know what it's like for a current student. You can't just assume. I mean, you reference some of the old school ways of education. And, those pictures of factory workers are sometimes brought up at conferences I go to for innovative education. And don't take me wrong, but I'm like, are you kidding me? That was over 100 years ago. We've already evolved from that. And if you're at an innovative education conference forum and you're not talking to me about today's learner, you're not talking to me about, for me, it's high school that I mostly work with, 15 to 18-year-old, I'm out of here. Like you're actually not thinking about, like in a human-centered way, what they need and want. So the organization was started as an after-school program by the Poppins. Those are our founders. And they were working with students on experiential service projects. What breaks your heart is this beautiful question that's still part of our application to the high school program that Teresa Poppin coined, and I love it. What do you care about? Then we would go out, so this is predating me, find an organization that was doing that thing. Kids were really concerned about gang violence in some of our surrounding areas. Kids are really concerned about animal care. Kids were really concerned about young women feeling empowered and having leadership positions. Really concerned about the experience of homelessness in surrounding areas. Like, okay, we got a group of kids that are concerned about this. We're going to go find a partner that's thinking about this, an organization, or even find those people that are experiencing this and work with them using human-centered design. It's an empathy-based problem-solving methodology developed at Stanford Ski School. Let's work with them to really know these end users and to solve creatively. And again, no barrier to entry. This was an after-school program, right? 2008, this was started. And the students loved it. They thrived in it. They still do in these sorts of projects. And they would ask the question, why can't school be like this? Because again, remember, we started with, hey, what do you care about? What are you thinking about? What are you noticing in your community? Instead of, hey, we know you need to do this, this, and that to succeed. It never started like that. So out of that came them saying, We wish school could be like this. I mean, they were like kicking them out of this tiny little office down off of Emerald. That was some of my first introduction. And as I was brought in as an expert to be interviewed on like stress and wellness, my background's in neurotoxicology. So
is coffee bad for me?
You're doing great.
Okay,
you seem real energized.
I'm really happy. I'm a very happy guy.
Yeah, you seem like you're thriving.
Okay, great.
Drink water.
Okay.
Don't forget to drink water. It's a diuretic, you know?
Keep going.
Yep. So, and when I met these students brought in, like, what do you think of stress and how does it affect the brain? I was like, these questions are next level. You know, and this is while I was still a professor at the College of Idaho, but I could see like, whoa. One, it was students that greeted me, students that interviewed me. This was not a, you know, quote unquote school assignment. And I wasn't walking into a school, you know. So when it became obvious that this could be bigger, that maybe we could try this with more students in a different way, I got some initial grant money to start a school. And it was fundamentally designed around the question, what do high schoolers need most? And we held 2 big think challenges with hundreds of students. They were invited to come if they could make it to the ice rink, you know, where the Steelheads play, spent 24 hours on this questions, hundreds of high school students, and used human-centered design around the question, what do you need as a high schooler? Did 2 sessions of this, and we came out with, we need it to be based on what we care about. Our passions is another way. Passions can be a fueled word, but let's boil it down. We want to care about it in order to see ourselves in it. Second, it has to be relevant. This is gonna be relevant. I gotta think that this is relevant in the world.
Relevant.
Relevant.
I've been telling over the course of the session, I did, I don't know how many dozen education interviews with, you know, elected leaders or State Superintendent Debbie Critchfield. People, you know, at heads of smaller associations, ISBA, the IEA, like everything, right? And it all boils down to, is our education system relevant, and are we expressing that relevance? Right? That's what it is. Like, do you have relevance? And if you don't know if what you're teaching has relevance, you need to stop right there. And then even once it does have relevance, are you expressing that relevance to the patrons? Are you expressing and sharing that relevance with students and the families that are deciding the future of the student? And that's all education is. I read a fantastic article years back about a journalist that went out and hung out with the Bush tribe for like a couple months, right? And it was really weird because just getting in contact with them, there was somebody, you know, that had set it up, but they were like, okay, go to this tree on the edge of this thing and just hang out there. It's like, well, at like noon, they're like, somebody will be there. It's like, okay, somebody will be there by the end of the day. They're like, listen, these people don't really have a reference of time. So somebody will come and get you eventually. So he hangs out at this tree for like a couple days, right?
Oh, wow.
And then somebody shows up and like takes him off. And you know, classic communication about or reflection on you know, hunter-gatherer societies. Like, okay, a lot of their time is leisure. They really only spend like, you know, 2 to 3 hours a day focusing on needs, you know, and interpersonal conflicts. You know, some people are nice or some people are mean, or they found a natural anti-venom to like a snake, and one of the individuals didn't get some of it, and, you know, somebody had to take him aside. It's like, listen, you know, this person found it, it's theirs to dole out, and, you know, you guys are you're not getting along, so like you gotta, anyway, so normal human being stuff. But one of the things that's
snake venom stuff.
Snake venom. Well, it's kind of like if we only had so many versions of McAfee antivirus and we handed it out to our friends, and one of our friends didn't get the McAfee. It's like, why not me? It's like, well, you remember last week with the tacos? Like, you weren't. But one thing that always stuck with me is in communicating with the tribe about whether or not, because this one was understudy because people were starting to get picked off, essentially peeled off, and like go into mainstream society. And they were, you know, the tribe itself was shrinking. And in discussing anxieties that the youth had within that tribe, and they're like, okay, I wouldn't mind going and seeing other things, but what I'd be worried about is I wouldn't be able to learn about how to live from like the elders. And what you realized is their education and their focus was like, listen, I don't know how to make that bow that my dad uses like my dad does. And I need to learn how to do that, because if I don't learn, I cannot catch the monkey, right? Or like all of these different, you know, indigenous pieces of wisdom that you would never pick up or reproduce anywhere else. And they had a relevance because they're like, listen, I will die out here if I can't do what that guy does. And so there's this grounding of relevance and survival and real fundamental need for education that existed within the tribe. And I've always, as an educator, I always thought about that. It's like, okay, how is this relevant? I was in test prep and college entrance for almost 20 years before I moved here. That's all I ever wanted to do. I love teaching.
Okay. And I didn't know you were a teacher.
Yes. This is like, and again, literally the week I graduated college, I started tutoring privately. So again, I had to provide relevance because I didn't have a contract with anybody. It was literally like I got hired by somebody to help their student with math or English or entrance essays. And if I did not produce something of quality, those people would not refer me. And I did not market. I did not advertise. It was all word of mouth. So my goal of relevance and articulating relevance and having buy-in was fundamental to every single student I showed up to. Yeah. And it seems that we've moved away from that in the larger system where it's like, no, listen, you're the parent. I'm the educator, right? Or like I'm the school system and we're going to figure out, and like, I understand your student may not like this. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter. Like this is what we're going through. These are some of the big problems that I think have festered for decades and have produced a populace that at least to some degree is like, we need a different system.
Yes. I think it also potentially kind of chews up and spits out, not to be, over the top, some students that are unbelievably innovative and gifted. We've got a student graduating right now that's going to move on and just got a wonderful acceptance to a top school in car design. That's been this student's dream since he was little. Like he's really got photos of him winning like design contests for designing
work for
cars
Audi or something and make the new R8. That would be so sick.
He's going to the right college that I would say there might be a car designed by this kid.
You're telling me there's a chance.
Yes, I'm telling you there's a chance. But, in his story, it's been unequivocal what he cares about. And he cares about lots of different things. But there were some barriers to entry in previous education that made him quickly think that he didn't have what it took to be an engineer or a creative or a designer, of no fault necessarily of the system. But the point I'm trying to make is I'm not even sure folks that worked with him, educators, knew what he really cared about. Maybe, when I talked to him, I think he would mention it, but then it was so like, yeah, that's cute. That's whatever. Right now we're doing whatever it is. And I'm not saying fundamental skills are not important, but when he arrived to One Stone, we're like, this is cool. We're not going to wait on this. Like, oh, great. I hear you. Which elements are you most into? Are you into like the sketching and that? Are you really into the mechanics? Right. It's like all of it. And I was like, whoa. And we said yes to all of it right off the bat. Does that mean the student spends all day long, Monday through Friday, just designing cars? No. Several things along the way. Like we say we build a toolkit for life at One Stone. We have a really great, rigorous growth framework, we call it, with these skills, 24 skills, competencies, objectives, whatever you want to call them. Things on there like management, iteration, vulnerability, which I know is like, what? That's not a school thing? It is. Mathematical application, problem solving, a bunch of these really important things. Yeah. And we're like, you're going to have opportunities to explore how to grow in these and get to a level of actualizing. I mean, you can do it in multiple contexts. You can do it fairly autonomously or find the resources you need in lots of different spaces. So he was challenged. I mean, he was challenged at One Stone as well. It wasn't that he was designing cars all day. That was a piece. And we were always trying to build on that and build some like internships around that. I think that's really what helped really slingshot him into this college too. But he was never told like, no, you got to wait. Or no, that doesn't make sense right now. Or no, you could never do that until you've done calculus 4. Right. The kid is actually really good at math and I'm sure would do fine. I don't want to kind of make it seem like you can't do one without the other. But to get this kid in an applied mathematics thinking, he wants to build stuff and see what breaks it, And I'm like, yes, let's build stuff and see where it breaks down and then see where you could model it on the front end to build it better. And I'm saying this is our incredible team of coaches. We call each other coaches and by first name instead of teachers. It's very mindful. And I think along the way, the constant infusion of listening to him and saying that your relevant dream is we are there for it all the way made all the difference in the world. And it wasn't like the students don't fail. It's not like they don't do things they don't want to do. Failure is really like encouraged as a part of the learning process at One Stone.
Oh my God. Like
it's very much encouraged.
I think I told you really quickly, I was at a media event, career event this week for BSU. And I was on a panel and somebody asked about something. And I was like, listen, I have never had a job. I have never been employed. I don't know how to fill out a resume. If you are here to understand how to like get the job you want, I am not the guy to tell you how to do that. But what I can tell you is value proposition. What can you do? Yeah. What can you offer people? And you're going to have to be incredibly resilient. And my resilience as a professional comes from my capacity to fail at something over and over and over. If you look at some of my first podcasts, especially from my original not even this one. Like this one started out at a certain level, but the original one, it was like I was filming deep cuts
for your listeners.
Dude, it was brutal. I was filming myself off of my MacBook, and then I was like, I need a second angle, so I set up my iPad. It's terrible. I didn't know how to do any of it. But, and even seeing that, we're such discriminating consumers when it comes to content because we have a world of content at our fingertips and we know what great stuff is. We know what terrible stuff is. And man, when you're the worst of the worst, it is so hard to look at that and be like, okay, pick one thing to improve and like start working in that direction. But the failure component, unless you've experienced failure and developed resiliency, you will never be able to grow in the manner that you need to be cutting edge, because the cutting edge is like you're teetering on the edge of like what's incredibly accepted and incredibly awesome. And you're like teetering over the edge with like, oh my God, nobody's done this before. It's like, I know, but I trust my balance. Like I can do it. To get to that point, you got to walk through all of the major competencies and develop those skill sets. So you're like, I'm going to use all the tools and I'm going to use them in a way that nobody's ever used them. And I'm going to invent a tool to do this other thing and like, watch this.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, and I am a full product of public school. I went to Taft Elementary and I went to Hillside Junior High and I graduated from Boise High, where my mother graduated from. You know, I'm a fifth generation Idahoan. I'm the first person on either side of my family to go to college. And the fact that I went to graduate school was a little next level, even for me. Times. And all along the way, I think that I was given lots of opportunities to see my potential. But I also experienced this like paralyzing fear, like especially being the first person to go to college. If I get one, heaven forbid, B or C, it's over. And I believed that. I truly believed that. And my first term of college was rough. It was rough. I got a C in that first physics class, and I was like, the horror. The
humanity.
How could I ever, you know? And I've worked through it, but the story I was telling myself, and I think perhaps the story that other students tell themselves, is it's an end game. It is done. That one thing, that one score, that one grade has predetermined that you're not going to go to college, or you're not going to be a scientist, or you're not good at writing, whatever it is. Insert whatever the thing is. And we're not in a space right now where that helps anyone, first of all, and where those not arbitrary, let me rephrase, where some of those assessments are not actually assessing what it's like to live that skill, either in a career or in your life. It's a false sense of failure. That's actually maybe not even real failure, because you're not doing the thing that maybe ultimately you'll be applying the skill in. You're just showing some sort of demonstration based on whatever it is.
Sure.
Maybe it's memorization, or maybe it's just the skill of test taking. So I feel like, even from my personal story, it's helped me to really buy in on this, because I've seen so many students come in with previous stories. There's a new American student who is graduating, going to college. I've been working with this student for 4 years, and she was convinced early on here, her English wasn't very, very good, that, dumbest person on the planet, and actually also perhaps like rude, because she couldn't quite understand what was going on. I have no fault to the educators. They didn't know, the resources were limited. But that mindset she came in with took a lot of work to be like, you are an articulate person. You have language skills, you have written skills, you're creative, you're empathetic. I see you being incredibly generous, and you're really, really good at making complicated human problems approachable. But the mindset shift from a system that was saying, no, you're actually just a failure. Instead of like, you failed at this thing and we need to work on these skills, feeling like you are a failure.
Right. Because you can be bad at one thing. Like I studied rhetoric at Cal, but I went in as a math major. So, and the reason I switched is because after a couple years of math, I had to take the subject A exam, which was this writing exam to figure out what level. And I was so bad at it. My friend Marcel from Germany, who was like literally from Germany. Yeah. He passed the subject A basic writing exam. I failed. So I had to take this rudimentary writing course, and I was terrible at writing and like suffered through this course. And I ended up getting a B- in it. And I was like, but dude, I like halfway through, I'm like, hang on, I think I got this. And then I switched. I started taking rhetoric courses, which were all persuasion and writing, and argument.
Clearly.
And I was like, hell yeah, like this is great. And so I switched. But if you just look at the subject A,
I know,
right, where it's like, oh, you're really bad at this. And so it's like, I failed that test and then I got a B- in the rudimentary writing. It's like, okay, you're really not skilled here. And then so it's like you go from failure to not really skilled to like marginally skilled to okay. And then like, wow, that's actually really good. It's like, okay, so what point in this continuum do I get the grade of competency? Like you want to stamp a broader perspective of my life being like, okay, you failed at this. A friend of mine, former client, he actually owns the patent for the first digital camera. And when I met him, and my wife and I actually worked with his daughter in different capacities for tutoring, but when I met him, they were defending the patent in like Delaware or Michigan, where there was a favorable judge, and they kept taking the cases. So they were like suing Kodak and Canon, and they were like winning all of these, and each of the suits took like 2 years. And so they were getting paid out. So really cutting edge technology. This guy told us, we went over to his house at one point for dinner, great people. And he told us, like, listen, I've met some really bright people in my life. Right. And he was telling us about a story about meeting Bill Gates and, working with him on these different projects. And he said, listen, I've met some smart people. There was a gal that came in to interview. I think she was from Singapore. I'm not 100% sure. But he was like, when I say she was smart, I mean, she was smart. Right. And he said, I handed her a couple problems, very involved. And she had gone through some rigorous 6-year program where I think they worked. He was like, it was 16-hour days, and then they had two hours off for personal things, and then they'd sleep 6 hours, and they do this like 7 days a week. He was like, she ripped through this material like it was a joke. And he was like, and this was hard stuff. He said, ultimately, though, the deciding factor came when he handed her a problem at the end. He's like, okay, you can do all of this stuff. What do we do here? And he said the problem that he handed her did not have a correct answer. Oh. And she broke. Like she first looked at it and then like rethought about it, and then she just refused to answer. And he's like, I'm going to need an answer. She's like, I can't answer this. And she wouldn't take a side. He didn't even care what the answer was. He cared about her looking at something that was not possible to solve. So failure was guaranteed because there was no right answer. Yeah. And her capacity to work through that and make a best decision and then deal with that decision, whatever came downstream from it. Yeah. And again, going back to the idea of being open to fail, in the absence of that, we do not get the innovation that we all love. We do not get the workforce and creativity that we all have relied upon.
Well, and there's these crazy numbers I'm seeing about, we even have some of this data from our students of the perceived stress that students are under. So we'll just go high schoolers, like 15 to 18. It's like almost 70% that feel incredible perceived stress about their future, stress about what they're doing now, just in general, a perceived stressful identity and view of the future. And it's kind of mirrors what the perceived stress is, especially of the Generation Z and millennial workforce. High. And I'm using the word, it's actually a clinical diagnostic tool, perceived stress. Not saying the stress is not real, but their perception of it is through the roof. And there's been so much talk about resilience, right? That after the pandemic, that students didn't have as much chance to grow these resiliency skills, right? Whatever it is. These things are correlated. And resiliency you can't build. How do you learn to make it through failure or make it through something hard if you've never been given the chance to try. Like this is not, it doesn't make sense to me. Like you can't just expect a student or somebody coming into the workforce to be really good at hard situations, maybe situations where there isn't an answer and you have to reform the problem if they've never been given the chance to try. And OneStone truly, like one of our main metrics for seeing if a student's a good fit for our lab school is we try to determine if there's the potential for growth in them as a mindset. Do they have a growth mindset, or there's just a little nugget of it, meaning that they do believe, and it could be coached, that they can grow and they have this capacity for growth. It goes back to some of Carol Dweck's stuff, which I know has been now, it's not just growth mindset, it's now like cultures of growth. I believe that's one of the strongest pieces of OneStone. We truly have a culture of growth with our staff. I am a product of that. I have grown so much in the last year. The previous executive director and one of our founders retired. We're in a culture where that is okay. Everybody knows, like Celeste I've been there for 8 years. Like I know and believe in OneStone, the fabric of my being, but everything I need to do in this particular position, I didn't know until I was in here. And I tried, and I have a great board. It's composed of 2/3 students and people like that are experts in their field. And it's not just with the students we give them the opportunity, it's also the adults that are around us, and also in us trying to promote. This is a big agenda of mine. Get a high schooler. Again, high school is what I live. You can translate to the middle school or whatever.
I love high schoolers.
Well,
They're
get
great.
them into your space.
Yeah.
Why don't we all have high school interns in our workspaces? Full stop. There's people go, the liability. I'm like, come on. We can get around that. We have high schools full of minors all day long, full of them. Right. Okay, so we can get through whatever you need to do to make you feel comfortable about having a minor in your space. We need to have young people, and I don't care if it's a job shadow or just an expert interview, better yet, an internship, better yet, a paid internship as like a mandate, a civic mandate of us making it so it's such a big difference when a student sees someone, when you're on that panel at Boise State,
yes,
they see a potential of a lifestyle, of a career or whatever that they didn't know really existed, until they met you or saw you on a panel. That's what fundamentally changes them to think, I could do that. If that guy told me his story, sounds like he was filming off of an iPad. Like, yeah. I can do this.
So bad. It was so bad.
But that's those stories and that connection are really, really important. When people say, like, what are you asking for? If I'm out in the community or if I'm talking to somebody at an organization and I'm like, lean in with us. One of my main asks is, where could a high schooler participate in what you're doing? Do you have a problem? Do you have a juicy problem? I can give a team of high schoolers and we'll make it one of our human-centered design projects. Do you have interns? Like, what, and they're like, we're an engineering firm. It's too high level. I was like, everything? I was like, what about this? What about that? Where are some places and what that breeds too, and like the cross-generational connection is huge. The divide is getting really large between the ages. And I'm not talking about just the years. So I'm 45 years old. The difference between me and these 15 to 18-year-olds is not 20 years, right? Little less. In terms of like mindset and lived experience, we're talking more like 50 years. With the way that technology is progressing.
Oh my God,
look at your
sorry.
Technology.
Well, it's just a timer. Keep going.
It's a way larger divide because of how quickly things are moving. So the way to shorten some of that divide is to get some different ages of people and different experiences together quicker.
Right. You have to integrate. They're not going to be able to bridge the gap if all they do is hang out with people at their same level, their same, MO. Like, and that's one of the biggest things. It's like, listen, what I told a lot of the students at the career fair is, look, I don't use a huge amount of technology. Like, I don't use AI editing. I don't use, I am manual. I am hyper efficient. Over the legislative session, I think I did 170 episodes in 90 days by myself. And that includes all editing, all ripping out cuts, all scheduling, all conversations, which is exceedingly difficult if you do 6 different shows in one day that are on 6 different, like you're going from forestry to education to law enforcement to like blah, blah, blah. You can do all these things and they're not ever going to know how I do that if we don't integrate them and then say like, this is how I've systematized, like systems are something that's one of like my primary skill sets. I'm very good at systematizing and increasing efficiencies, which is how I get everything done. But those things need to be shared. And to your point, gal came up and she actually she was like, listen, I went into sales, I did all these things. And then I decided like, I didn't want to do this. So I came back to school. So she was, I think she's like 30. Okay. She's like, I'd love to come and shadow you. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like you can come.
There you go, Matt.
Now, but listen to me. Instantly I leave. I'm like, she can't come hang out in my space. I'm like, I can't have some random 30-year-old gal sitting in the studio with like just me. I'm like, maybe I could set up a camera or something. Like she's not even a minor. And she's like a totally normal, nice person who genuinely seemed interested. But I myself even went to like, I can't have somebody in this space. Like just me and them alone. Like I need a third party here.
Well, we need to talk about it more, right? Like I think that's the part that I love how much people are talking about career-connected learning. And Idaho is very committed to career-connected learning in public schools and all sorts of different forums. Just like you can't, I'm going to go back to, I feel like I'm a broken record. You can't read about and really understand what it's like to be a professional podcaster or engineer. You need to go see what a studio looks like. You need to know what does a clean room look like in a microchip engineering place. It truly makes a difference if you can put them in the environment, them being the student or the people that are curious. And so it needs to be more accepted that that's just something that we do. Like I said, like almost like a civic duty. Like if you've got something, we've got to figure out a way, especially if you care about young people, or to make it that forums, panels are great too. You know, somebody doesn't have to sit in your studio. I get that. But finding the other places where you can talk about your story we just had a panel. It was awesome. We had 4 very expert people in marketing and then a VP at a bank that gives like loans to good ideas were our pitch competition for the students' business ideas. They were so good. They were so good. And they're pitching, they were nervous. You know, our students are used to public speaking, but they weren't pitching to me. I was in the room. I invited them. I invited the heads of these great creative agencies. I invited the person from the bank, great advocate. They were ready to give feedback and they did. You know, I was like, clearly, this is constructive, but do not hold back with these students. If they showed you their, what their minimum viable product was or what their finance plan was, and you think it's complete garbage, maybe don't say it's complete garbage, but like, walk me through that, help them see where it breaks down. It was unbelievable. They totally rose up. And this kid with this great idea, I still think it's great. I could do this. It's a mobile car service. You know, you can go and get your car picked up and they'll go wash it for you.
Yeah.
His is they'll change your tires for you, which I'd been like, yes, please. I had my studded snow tires on since last week. Don't judge. They're finally off. But if he would have said, Celeste, I'll fill your car up with gas and get your studded snow tires off and I'll get your regular ones on, I'd be like, show me where to put my credit card information in. I love this. Wash it at the same time. Like, I'm busy. It's parked over on the outside lot. And so the kid that pitched that, the person who's amazing from the bank, who's an advocate of ours, called him up the next week. He's like, this is a really good idea. I know another pitch competition for you to be in. And in fact, there might be some startup here. That's incredible. So even little things like that.
I think he needs to start an app. The other thing I think that would be really good is if he collaborated with the 3 best oil and like
so it's oil change.
Yes. So this is the thing. And you go to places that have predominantly service people that are commuters. So you can either collaborate with the parking lots in the city of Boise.
We have the commuter lots.
Right. So you go to the commuter lots and you collaborate with the commuter lots and the mechanic services and all of these different things. And then somebody can schedule via like white glove app, just like, oh, I want an oil change today and my tire's off, and boom, this is the parking stall I'm in, and boom, the car disappears, comes back. They don't even know. And it's all done when the person gets back to the parking garage.
I love this so much. I mean, I have almost run out of gas so many times. It's so funny. You know, my fiance will be like, you had to put gas in them. And I'm like, I just don't have time. He's like, you're going to have time when you run out of gas. You're
gonna make time.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a big one. Listen, I feel like we're just hitting our flow. Yeah. I know your time is short today. Please come back because I want to know about more of the projects, more of the integration of like you get somebody without, growth mindset is something that people have talked about. It was like the 80s when they started talking about critical thinking and everybody's like, we need critical thinkers. It's like, okay, well, how do you do that? Yeah. Like this is actually a really big problem. And again, that's a different conversation, but I want to know how you guys started integrating growth mindset, project-based learning, and convincing people. I mean, you have somebody who wants to do car design. It's like, all right, you're going to have to take an English class too. And of course, the question is like, why? And it's like, well, how do you think you're going to pitch these things if you can't communicate, either in the written word or spoken word? And don't tell me you're just going to use ChatGPT to make pitches. Like, you're going to need public speaking. You're going to need to understand proper grammar and articulation.
Absolutely.
Like, you're going to need all of these things along the way. You want to hit a home run, that's fine. You're going to have to work on a lot of different mechanics to get the home run out of the park.
You got to learn to swing a bat.
Yes. There was it was a kids cartoon. My kids watched when they were growing up about like bears. It's not Paddington Bears. It's like Berenstein Bears.
There you
go. There it is.
Yeah.
And the son wanted to be like this great baseball player, and he kept trying to hit home runs. And the person teaching was like, listen, this is complex. Like, you can't just swing the bat like harder and harder. Like, you're going to have to fix all of these like 10 things before you have the base to then hit a home run. And I appreciated that sentiment then. And I just think it's more and more relevant now. It's something that all young people need to realize.
And real stakes are important. So that example I just gave you, where there's a panelist, some heads at creative agencies, somebody at a bank.
Yes.
That's real stakes. That's real stakes. Like, even though we didn't know that follow-up was going to happen with one of the panelists, the real stakes is somebody that knows a lot and it's a professional giving you feedback. Genuinely, they cared. They stepped it up. It's different than if they just gave it to the coaches or to me or whatever. More opportunities for real stakes. But it's fail forward, fail often, but also don't fail catastrophically. We're bumpers on the bowling alley here. We weren't going to have any kids set up there that had a presentation that did not have what they thought about for finance. Totally. Like, we weren't going to do that. We're going to coach them along. But the reason why they showed up and actually went beyond maybe a little bit their capacity is because there was a real consequence. These people that were coming in that were clearly taking time out of their day, we're going to give them their opinions. And there could be a follow-up, clearly for something bigger. And bridging that is not easy. And I have fundamental empathy and respect for what it looks like at a school for 1,500 kids, right? I think that's some of the public school size now, probably bigger, getting closer to 2,000.
Right.
And then when a school ours sits around 100, I get that. But I'm happy to talk about that too. I think that's mindset. I think that's mindset of the educator.
I think we're dealing with a lot of different conversations, a lot of different shows. Yeah. So perhaps a series on education as you guys see it, with size, mentality, leaders, the whole bit.
And we could get some more of our staff in here, which would be great.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
I'd love that. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for the quick conversation.
Yeah.
We're going to do it again soon.
Okay. Thank you.